Who would like to go first on fair dealing?
Well,
Fair dealing. I'll give that one to you.
It's going to take half an hour.
I'll summarise this stage because it's quick. So there is a provision under the law
Oh, come on.
to use material without paying for the copyright under the fair use provision, and that there's several aspects to that. And the reason why it's there is because of that fair use. The problem is that you're not supposed to do it to save money. Okay, that's illegal. You can't just go, oh, it's going to cost us a fortune or fair use it. But everybody does that. Specifically when you're making terrestrial programs for the terrestrial channels, specifically internal, so BBC for BBC all the time. And I can't stand it, to tell you the truth. If something's fair deal or best endeavours in my production, I've failed. And that's why I don't have any in my productions. It's just, it makes me stay awake at night, you know, thinking, oh, this film's going to come out in cinema. I'm like, someone's going to come after me after that. So, but yeah, there is a provision to do it though. And also it's different in the States than it is here, but very similar. So there's fair use and fair dealing, and they are different.
So if a maker is going to use, go for it, Christine.
Thanks for summarising, James. And I should have probably mentioned before that I am a copyright lawyer at my company, so we deal with this kind of queries quite often. And it is true that the provision exists. How do you deal with that? So the fair dealing, who makes the decision whenever you're...
Exactly. I mean, I can advise, you know, I know a lot about the subject, but at the end of the day, I don't have letters behind my name, and so you've got to ask a lawyer. A lawyer's got to take a call on it, and also when you're making a big film, for example, the insurer's got to know about it, because if you're taking a risk on something, then there's risk assessment, and you might choose to insure yourselves against it on a big production like
Absolutely,
that.
absolutely.
And
it is true what you were saying before in terms of international. So fair dealing is only something that would be applicable within the territory, or fair dealing is actually a provision. But if you're thinking of showcasing anything internationally, and a lot of this production are for worldwide distribution, then the moment you get outside of the territory where that provision actually would make any sense, you make yourself liable for correct claims. So we tend not to fair use or fair deal anything, actually just fair deal because it's UK based. Anything that would have been produced in France, they would crucify us. And as you say, it's very different in the States. Their provision is much, much broader. We would sometimes apply something that we call the country of origin principle, according to which if something has been created and produced in that particular country and would fall under fair use or fair dealing in that particular country, then use somewhere else would be treated like it would be treated in that particular country. But it's all a matter of risk assessment. The advice is always, it's fair dealing when it comes from somebody who doesn't have your experience, or like a suggestion, can we just fair use this? Can we just fair deal this? Or it's Creative Commons, that's another funny one. That's lovely.
I've had so many arguments.
I can imagine.
It's just been invented by Wikipedia, I'm sure, Creative Commons. It's just like, where did this come from? No, it's not, you're talking nonsense.
Yeah,
just
exactly.
Apply the law.
Yeah.
Ignore that.
Can I ask about Creative Commons?
Yes.
It is licensed, so are you against it, or are you just...
That will not hold up against a claim, in my opinion. And the lawyers, when you're making something for the Beeb or blah, 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 it just won't cut the mustard.
I have different experience depending on, because correct me if I'm wrong, but you've worked a lot with theatrical, you worked a lot with TV, and possibly for online as well. And especially for online, we do find
that's a little bit different.
There are some cases, so we tend to be stricter with Creative Commons. There are protocols in-house in which if somebody comes to us and says, this image has been released on Wikipedia and Creative Commons 0, which would be the public domain, or 4.0, which is the international license. The first question is, who's uploaded it? Do they have the right to upload this content and then release it into public domain? well, not public domain or Creative Commons, depending on which license they decide to use. More often than not, it would be somebody who's kind of photographed from a book and have decided that in the US that's older than 70. Well, the author would have died over 70 years ago, therefore it would be public domain in the US. And over there, a photograph of a two-dimensional object would not attract copyright, therefore that would be in the public domain. That wouldn't work over here, for instance. So one thing is the uploader the right holder? May not be. Then what criteria must be used to determine whether this picture is in the public domain or not? And then there are the other licenses. So even if something is legit, and the rights holder is actually released into Creative Commons, then you have to abide by the license. It's a by license. All of them tend to be a by license. You have to credit the author or the rights holder in a certain way, and if you don't do it, you open yourself to claim because you're in breach of their rights. And another thing that I was thinking that I now forgot, the share alike, which is a lovely one. And most of you will be familiar with that. According to the share alike license, if you modify the original content when you place it in your own content, then you have the obligation to release your own content under the same terms and conditions. So if you use something for free under a share alike license, you're supposed to then distribute your content under the share alike license. Obviously, nobody will want to do that. So we tend to, because in the legal team, we don't have the manpower to go through all the content that is produced. Then as guidelines for the company, we have Creative Commons is an absolute no-go. It's not always true, but it's better to play it safe.
I'll answer that. I've licensed lots of feature films. As you can see, in my generation, there's the Icarus File, Italian Job, Alfie, Zulu, blah, blah, blah. It's a bit of a trick question, to tell you the truth, because it all depends, but each case is completely different. So, for example, who owns copyright to the film? If it's a big US Hollywood film studio, if it's Fox, just forget about it. It's too expensive, 30,000 quid. If it's Paramount, they're really good. I mean, it's still expensive, but if it's a British film from the Rank Collection or Studio Canal, for example, technically French, but it's kind of here, and it can get really good deals. I licensed several stuff from Studio Canal. I actually went direct to Studio Canal because I started to make this before Lola we're in business. So, so they will own the copyright, but then there's lots of underlying rights to the film, for example. So if you've got talent on screen, technically, you should ask the copyright holder, have you got any information of who I would need to clear all the rights they were on and what contracts they signed up in the first place? More often than not, when it's an old film, they don't. So if that's the case, it's like, you take the risk. Do I clear this person? Is he speaking? Is he prominent? Then you've got writers. So who wrote possibly, we showed a clip of Brief Encounter, and Michael slightly takes the mickey out of it, and they're like, oh God, do I clear Noel Coward, who wrote the book and the screenplay? And we took the call that we wouldn't, actually, because it's very much in context, and it's such a brief clip. But you have to address all these things, and then you've got stuff like, for example, if there's a guy jumping off a bridge, there's a stuntman. So they've got a stuntman's union, so technically you have to clear the stuntman for something like that. So each one has to be taken on individual merit. You can then also go, okay, we can use offcuts from movies, of which you just pay the license fee. There's no one in it. There's probably no directors. You might have to pay a director as well in some cases, certain territories. But, an offcut from a movie, the Studio Canal stuff, there's some amazing New York in the 50s and, backplate stuff. which is just a license fee. You don't have to consider any other third-party stuff. But if you've got John Wayne getting off his horse and you want to put it in another film, clear John Wayne. You know, go to the estate, be prepared for them to say it's going to cost you $500,000, kid. So a lot of people, I love actually using movies in licensing movies because they're a challenge, but you can actually make something really cool. You know, we did a great deal with Paramount, and they're actually affordable compared with, you know, trying to license anything off Disney. It's no impossible. Finding the person to speak to is all hard to beat, to be true. But then you get Paramount, Larry McAllister, and he's like, yeah, James, let's do a deal. Great stuff. Sign the license. Yeah. So never shy away, but just it's expensive.
Yeah, Sandra?
I was going to say, from the ITV collection, obviously they represent the rank collection, so what we usually ask you guys is, what's the clip, what's the context you're being used, and then the rights team are really helpful, so they will give you all the information you need, who you need to clear with, is there any underlining rights, is there going to be any issues, and what the costs are. So it's really easy to actually use that type of content from the rank collection. So.
Great.
Rank's amazing. But get the book of all the films. There's a copy of that from years ago, and it's fantastic, and they're really good rates as well. Also Channel 4 films as well, Train Spotting, and license that for cheap. So, you know, keep it British. Or French, for example. French amazing films. So, yeah.
I mean, with home videos, a lot of our footage obviously is home movies. We represent a collection called Look Through Time, which is home movies shot in the 20s and 30s. We do try and clear everybody. When we take it on, we let the partner take on that indemnity for us. So we would hopefully have all that information for you.
I was thinking more in terms of if you've sourced your... Oh, sorry. I was thinking more in terms of if you've sourced your own footage, say like you've got talent and they've got their own footage, personal footage, which they share.
It depends what you use.
Yeah.
You know, there's loads of home movie stuff in all the stuff. I've just done a film called The Quiet One. It's the Bill Wyman story. It's all of his home movies. It's incredible. And there's loads of people in it. But it's a documentary. It's editorial use. You don't have to clear Mrs. Miggins in the pie shop making a pie. You know, that's history. That's time. If you're going to include that on an advert for Vice or a big brand, then she's advertising that product. Editorial use in a documentary, unless you're not saying that this woman's a serial killer or
in context
whatever.
and non-defamatory.
Yeah. You also can't defame a dead person. But that's a really good thing. That's a really good point, actually, for your horror stories thing. So, I once did a project for an organisation, and I was doing this documentary. It's going to be released online, showing certain things, and it said at the end of the process, they went, "Why can you see everyone's faces in this footage?" And I was like, well, it's a documentary about sound systems. And so, you know, it's an old Jamaican Rasta in Kingston in 1972. With a big, you know, Rasta cigarette. And they're like, it's sponsored by Marlboro, this film. And I was like, you never told me that 2 months ago. I was like, this is, you know, we've made this as a documentary, not a branded content film. So, that was, if you're doing it for a brand or anything like that,
Does that answer your first question about, are you working with someone who's potentially providing you with home movie footage of themselves?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
If they've shot it, it's their copyright.
Yeah.
They physically pressed a button on the camera, they own the copyright to it, it's their intellectual property. Regarding pricing, always haggle. Never take it on face value. You can always get a deal. Good tip for you: get at the end of the month or at the end of the quarter.
That's such a good one.
But I think also it's important to know that a lot of the agencies will have deals with the broadcasters. So if you get in contact with us at the beginning of your project, we might have a deal with the BBC where you get discounted rates already. If you tell us what your budget is at the beginning of the project, we try to make sure that we can work within your budgets as well.
So would you recommend being quite upfront about the budget?
Yeah. I mean, we like to try and get involved at the beginning of a project so we know exactly what type of value you've actually got, and so we can actually work with you.
Yeah, the best suppliers will do that, by all means. And I'm honest, when I'm doing my generation, I've got a lot of money to spend. I don't mind paying good rates because I know I've got the budget. If you've got a tiny project, I'm pretty honest, like, look, this one I'm cap in hand, company, you're going to have to do me a favour, but you know I'm going to spend the money on the bigger film when that comes round. So quid pro quo, and that's where you get really good relationships with your suppliers.
And I think also from a footage agency point of view, this industry is quite a small industry, so we do try to work with the archive producers to actually help them. If we haven't got money on one project, you might have money on another project, so we'll try and work with you. So from our point of view, what we've been doing is we do actually go and do the clearance for you. We will contact the YouTube owner and we will get them to sign an agreement to actually say that they own all the footage in that clip and they will indemnify. So, and then we'll put it on through Lola, and you can actually obviously license it through us.
Okay, and so that would be where Best Endeavours comes in. If they don't reply or whatever after however long, or do you just not do it?
I mean, I think with YouTube owners, they do tend to take a while to get back to you, which is why there's a lot of agencies out there that now go and clear content directly with the YouTube owners, and we've actually set that up as a part of our systems to actually go and do that, because production companies don't have time to do it.
Yeah. So then do you charge for that, or do you advise them to charge, or
we take it on as a we would then take it on as a partner. We would obviously give them commission if you not rent and license it, so they would actually get a bonus if they do actually get it licensed.
Which is incentive both sides.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, the gone release, just because it's on YouTube, doesn't mean you can use it.
No, I'll ask a question.
Yeah, but also a great horror story. This a few years back, ITV were making a documentary about the IRA, and through probably penny pinching or whatever, or not very much money in the budget, they didn't employ a proper archive professional, and so when the programme went out, they showed a rocket being fired off the back of a Land Rover, and it was actually from a computer game. Because, and it looked pretty realistic, but if you look closer, it was meant to be a real documentary about the IRA. They actually thought it was real, and they got in a lot of trouble for that. And that's just, you know, due diligence. You know, go deeper, deep, chase these people.
Can I bring something up, because it's quite interesting. I've been following this story quite a lot. I'm responsible to the sort of licence compliance at work, and I often do training with people, and we have people come in and we say, you know, have you got IP? And they go, no. I'm like, have you got an iPhone? Have you got a smartphone? They say, oh yeah, I have. And so we talk about the whole licensing piece. But something that had came up recently in 2011, there was a British photographer that was overseas and he was taking photographs, and I don't know if you've seen the story about the macaque monkey. So these selfies. So it was in 2015, PETA, the organisation, launched a sort of a lawsuit in America saying the copyright of this image is actually with the monkey, not the photographer. So even though it's their camera, the monkeys picked this camera up and is taking their own photograph, and only on Monday, so it's 2018, only on Monday did they kick it out. So saying
that poor monkey.
Copyright can only be associated with humans. It's a human right. So that's the other thing is this idea around copyright and who the owner of the copyright is really important, and it can be a little bit vague. But the other thing as well to consider is that, you know, for me, people within an image, especially, you know, people under the age of 13, they can't give consent to our own imagery, so we have to be quite creative. And even with editorial, people do have a sensitivity around it. about how they maybe use content that involves minors so that you can't identify them. So, you know, it is those subtleties there. And I think for me, we also have quite a lot with respect to, imagine, so PA's covered a protest in the 1970s, in the 1990s, whenever it might have been. The onset of Google, you type your name in, and next thing you know, your picture comes up. You know, I don't want people to know that I was part of a protest I was really, was engaged with at the time. It's, maybe preventing me from getting a job, or they want me to be on the PTA at work, at school, and they're going to comment because of this, and they want to be forgotten about. We have quite a few people that might come to us and say, that was then, this is now, and actually we've done nothing wrong by the fact that we're documenting life as it takes shape in front of us. We once randomly had a lady that contacted us because she didn't want her photograph. She was at the Harrods sale. We suggested that maybe she shouldn't have been there, and that there was this picture of her like grabbing all the things off the Harrods sale and didn't want people to know. So there's not just the copyright holder, there's also the people and those within it, images.
Is there any impact in terms of the right to be forgotten that is influeing or affecting how you use your collection, how you license out your collection?
As a copyright holder, there is no need for us as such to take that away. Our archive is our archive. It's not about censorship. We will take things into consideration. We might, we might think about things depending on the circumstances. But I think there are some provisions around depending on the type of role that you might have. So if you're in the military or in the police services or anything like that, if you want to be forgotten about because of a misdemeanour, that might be something that's not necessarily the same. But this is how it just evolves constantly. I mean, I remember when I first took on my role in broadcasting, the lady that gave me the responsibility came and she went, BBC, got something about iPlayer? Don't know what it is. Yeah, it's something. And look what happens now. And so it just ever evolves. Copyright's the same.
And obviously, like you said, VOD providers are streaming providers. It has completely changed the landscape.
I was going to say, for us, we worked recently on a couple of UGC shows for Viacom, and there was drunk people doing stupid things. We will check every single clip, the compliance, because each broadcaster will have their own thing. And maybe somebody that was drunk in a club in London doesn't want to be seen again and again and again, so we will have to check that. We will go back to the original paperwork and double check those to make sure they're clear for you as well.
I feel that I should take this one.
Speak to the lawyer.
Although I should probably, I am the copyright lawyer, not the production lawyer. This would be the question of somebody else in my team, who, however, would answer that pretty much every broadcaster has a protocol of 2 steps, and the producer would need to come and build a case for step 1. So what it is, what kind of information you would. This is so out of topic. No, sorry. It was asked. but it's actually very interesting because you would need to. Don't take my word for it. I see that you're writing notes, but may I possibly direct you to the protocol, the Channel 4 protocols, which are online and distributed and industry practice. Everybody is taking inspiration from those. You would need to have 2 steps. One, prior to collecting the material to build a case, and what you want to collect can only be obtained through secret filming, and why you wouldn't be able to obtain it through actually going and talk to the person and without means. And then once you have collected that footage, you would go back through legal for the second step, and we would need to, the production lawyer would need to assess whether the public interest, whether the materials, the rushes that you've got, whether you've got a strong enough argument to breach privacy, and whether the public interest argument supersedes everything else that may come at place. It is not strictly a copyright question, but every broadcaster would have their own protocols for this.
It's never happened to me. I had one time where I did a show called the Friday Night Project. It was with Cilla Black. Anne Robinson. She used to do Points of View. You remember that? And the guy was reading the letter. you know, Jeremy from Stoke and Trent thought it was outrageous that the BBC blah blah blah. And Monday morning after the broadcast of Friday night, I checked. Bloke rings me up and goes, "I read that there. Can I, you know, you owe me some money?" And I was like mortified. I'd not even thought of it. And it cost him. It cost me. He was like, "Oh, can you just do me a DVD so I can show the grandkids?" But it's never happened to me. But I'm sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
I do
Cases
have some
from your
horror
house?
stories.
Yeah.
Well, it happened to a friend. It depends on where you are, where the claim is made. So let's assume, for sake of argument, that it's UK. It's the market rate, so they wouldn't be able to charge you more than what they would have charged you, but, well, without any discounts, etc., for the rights that you needed, plus maybe a fine. Or if it's not market rate and it's much higher, they should be able to present you with proof that they've charged that amount previously, yes. And it gets
But
expensive.
when you say that, can you just, that's what I'm asking, what's a ballpark figure?
There is no ballpark figure because I don't know what they use as. So the use depends on market rates to go with, distribution rights, what media, what territories, what.
If you're taking it for worldwide rights, or if you're
Yeah.
making the programme for a UK broadcaster, then you're wanting to take it to world, and you haven't cleared it, there will be different rates for
Yes, yes.
And then you're also running the risk of damaging your relationships potentially, which, as
Exactly.
we've heard,
I mean,
are
we really
that's where Best Endeavours is actually, you know, Best Endeavours are fair dues, but Best Endeavours it. Well, actually, with Best Endeavours, what you're supposed to do is get what you would have paid for it,
Oh yes.
put it aside, and essentially just double
Oh
it.
yes. So you
So
really
it's
want
costing
to.
you twice as much as actually licensing in the first place. That's kind of my, I mean, there's some
It
very
is.
rough rules.
And
No,
then
it
from a
is.
distributor's point of view, if you are taking it to world, they will just pull it out. If you haven't licensed it, they will pull the clip out of the final documentary as well.
I mean, you know, mistakes do get made though. I mean, you know, you've got E&O insurance, which does cover you. I mean, you know, the Anne Robinson thing, it's just a genuine hand on heart. Oh, just not even thought about it. It nearly happened to me on a show I did for BBC One called Darcy Dances Hollywood. And we'd licensed all the clips of Singing in the Rain, Top Hat, First Air, Gene Kelly, blah, blah, blah. And then it suddenly dawned on me, I was like, choreography rights. Went to the estate, Ben Crosby, and yeah, thank goodness I didn't make that mistake, but they would have gone after us if we hadn't cleared the choreography rights, because he still owned the rights to the choreography in the film. And I actually didn't know about choreography rights. I just had, after you do this job for certain reasons, you just have a spidey sense. Something's wrong. Woke up in the morning, I was like, right.
and just, sorry,
Yeah.
just very finally, Gemma, is there anything that you
No, I
want
mean,
to
I think
add?
the same as what Christine is saying. I think that what you've got to be aware of, it goes back to the same thing I think I said earlier, is that you know, copyright holders they have available to them more tools now so that they can find their content being used, and it shouldn't be a surprise if they do make contact with you if you haven't licensed through the appropriate channels. So it is something that you should always be considered of. I know it's not easy, and sometimes when you write up against a deadline and it feels as if you want to include the clip or the image because it just makes whatever it is that you've produced, do think about it.
Yeah, the way I generally go about with my producers is, okay, just put 15k aside, and that's when they drop it. That's when all of a sudden it's not important anymore to have that piece that they didn't manage to clear in the film.